Night draped the valley in a hush that pulsed with memory. The air carried whispers from roots deep in the soil fragments of my grandfather's dreams. The weight of generations. 42 acres of untouched beauty, resting beside a quiet river, as if the wind itself had vowed to guard it. That land wasn't just terrain, it was legacy. My grandfather, a stoic engineer with calloused hands, had built more than fences he'd, crafted a piece of eternity. He dug trenches with teeth clenched, planting trees that would grow strong enough to outlast him. And beneath all that, silent and hidden, lay something more, a reservoir with a floodgate, at its heart a silent sentinel, a promise of control over nature's chaos. He whispered the truth to me once. I remember the line he scribbled. On the corner of a napkin, fading with age, when they forget the parent, let the child remind them. I held that note when he passed, not knowing what it meant. Years later I understand, because the first time I saw the sign, I understood. Everything at the far edge of the property, framed by oak and birch it appeared, bright letters on cold metal, Riverstone Estates 235 luxury homes, developed by Silvergate HOA. No warning. No knock at the door. Just ownership claimed like a trophy, planted right where my grandfather's land should stand. I walked. Through the trees, boots sinking into familiar dirt that now felt like someone else's memory. Beyond the line, workers drilled and leveled, glass and marble replacing roots in history. I approached the man in the hard hat. "Who sent you?" I demanded. He shrugged. "The HOA." I held my breath, the silence heavy in my lungs. I didn't back down. They didn't just show up. They arrived like a disease, quietly, without permission. And by the time you noticed, the damage was already done. I remember standing there, same boots, same soil beneath me. But something was wrong. The ground didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt violated. Steel posts pierced the earth like needles. Bright plastic ribbons fluttered in the wind where trees used to grow. Yellow machines rolled over grass my grandfather once mowed with a rusted pushcutter. His sweat lived in that soil. His hands fed it, and now, strangers' blueprint had claimed it. I confronted the crew. Their helmets gleamed in the sunlight, polished like their silence. "This is private land," I said. "Mine?" They didn't flinch. One of them handed me a laminated site map, like he was delivering scripture. It had logos, lot numbers, a golf course layout, even a pool. "Right on top of my family's land, you'll have to talk to the HOA," he said, without looking me in the eye. "Silvergate handles everything," so I did. I showed up at their office the next morning, jeans dusty, heart pounding. The receptionist greeted me like I was just another appointment. "You must be here about the Riverstone development." Nodded. She smiled. That smile was a knife. The man they sent out wore a tailored suit and the kind of cologne that tried to cover the stench of deceit. He walked me through a portfolio, photos, permits, transfer documents, zoning approvals. "My land dissected and sold off on paper, it's already processed," he said. "We acquired the land 2 years ago." I stared at the forged signature on the sale deed, my name, but not my writing, not my ink, not my hand. I stood up without a word. As I walked out, he said something behind me, something smug. "This is how progress works." That night, I sat on the back porch. The reservoir was quiet, still, reflecting the stars like it didn't care about human greed. But I cared. And in that silence, I realized something. They hadn't just stolen my land. They declared war on a ghost they couldn't see. And ghosts remember everything. They thought I'd vanish, like a smudge on glass wiped away by contracts, clipped language, and legal ink. But I didn't disappear. I sharpened. The next morning, I showed up at the county registrar's office with the original deed in hand. Thick paper, stained at the edges, and signed in my grandfather's bold, uneven script. The clerk gave me the look they reserve for men who've already lost and don't know it yet. He took one glance at the document and blinked. "You said this land is yours?" "It was mine," I corrected. "Still is." Clicked his keyboard. Once. Twice. His jaw locked. Then he turned the screen toward me. Transfer. Date. June 3rd, 2020 seller. My name buyer. Silvergate, HOA. Verified via digital signature. I stared at the screen. My name, my land, my lie. I never signed that. He exhaled slow. If it's fraud, you'll need a lawyer. Lawyers meant time. Lawyers meant money. I didn't want compensation. I wanted the land to remember who it belonged to, so I filed the claim. I called 3 attorneys, sent emails, scanned copies, and filed affidavits. I followed the law step by step. I kept calm, was raised that way. Do things right. Until one morning, I returned home and found bulldozers on the ridge, not near it. On it, tires the size of tombstones had crushed the stone path my grandfather had laid with his own hands. Trees were gone. The cabin's back wall scraped. It's like a threat. That night I left them a message. I walked past the security gate they'd installed on my land, past the guard who didn't even try to stop me. I nailed a sign to the oak tree they hadn't yet felled. You built on stolen earth. I still hold the water in beneath it. I left a copy of the original deed wrapped in plastic, soaked in gasoline, and lit the corner with a match. It didn't burn the tree, but it sent the smoke skyward. A warning. One they ignored, but the land heard me, and so did the floodgate. Waiting, listening. They didn't know what slept beneath the soil. Buried under moss and stone was something older than any of their blueprints, something not listed in their glossy brochures or subdivision. Layouts agate, steel-toothed, rust-shouldered, silent. For decades, but never forgotten. It was built by my grandfather during the dry years, a time when this valley cracked from drought in the summer and threatened to drown in the spring. He poured everything into that reservoir. Said if man won't listen to the river, he better learn to control it. Control it he did. A reservoir fed by 3 mountain veins, slow trickles in dry seasons, roaring torrents when the snow melted early. That gate could hold back enough water to submerge the entire lower valley in 6 feet of flood in under 2 hours. But it wasn't for revenge. It was for balance until now. That week, construction moved faster. The HOA was on a deadline. Glass walls, steel frames, fake stone facades rising like teeth from the dirt. They didn't see it, but I did. They were building on a wound. I hiked up the path at dusk, alone, carrying the same oil can flashlight. My grandfather left me in a ring of rusted keys no developer knew existed. The trail curved behind the reservoir, past blackberry thickets and a broken fence line. And then I saw it. The gatehouse, tucked into the hillside, camouflaged by time. Concrete split with moss, iron door still holding. A relic of a time when men built things to last, not to flip and sell. Inside, it smelled of damp metal and waiting. The wheels stood tall in the center, connected to the flood valve deep below. Pipes hissed softly, like the system still breathed in its sleep. I ran my hand along the rim. Dust coated my fingers. It was still functional, still loyal at the back. Of the room bolted to the wall was a single plaque, crooked but legible. This water belongs to no man, but I will decide when it moves. H. Roads. 1967, they had taken my name off the land records. They had forged my signature. They had bulldozed history to build wealth porn on bones. But they forgot something vital. I didn't lose the land. I kept the key. The sky changed before anyone noticed. The locals blamed it on August, said the heat clashed with the mountain winds, that the storm rolling in was just a seasonal event. But I knew better. You'd spend enough time living close to the earth. You learn how it speaks. Air felt off, thicker, charged, like something was holding its breath. Down in the valley, the HOA pushed harder. Construction doubled. Cement trucks roared through dawn, their tires scarring the soil. Framing crews, hammered late into the night, working under floodlights. They were trying to beat the clock, but they didn't know what clock was ticking up at the reservoir. The water line crept higher, inch by inch. Rain kissed the surface like fingers tapping glass, first gentle, then steady, then insistent. The floodgate groaned, and still they built. I watched from the hilltop as they poured the foundation for mansion. #12. The site manager barked into a walkie. Workers moved like ants over a corpse, rushing, swarming, rushing again. But the valley was swelling, not just with water, with weight, with truth. One evening, I received a letter. Not a call, a letter from Silvergate's lawyers, a cessation. They accused me of trespassing, of harassment, told me to vacate the premises permanently. Vacate. I laughed. They sent the sheriff the next day, a young officer who couldn't meet my eyes. He handed me a folded paper. There's a development. Order signed off by the county. I asked him one question. Have you ever seen a dam burst? He hesitated. Sir, I'm just following orders. I looked past him at the homes, the glimmering windows, the fragile lines between stone and water. So was every man who ever built in the path of a river. He left. That night the storm arrived, not as thunder, but as pressure. It's the kind that sinks into your bones. The kind that rattles the screws loose on everything fake. Wind peeled through the valley like a curse. Trees bent, then howled. And the rain came harder, relentless, unforgiving, familiar. At 2:46 a.m., I stood in the reservoir control room, hand on the wheel, watching the monitors blink red. The pressure gauge had reached the line. Grandfather etched, "In with a knife. This is where you hold or release." I didn't move, not yet, but the storm had arrived, and the land was listening. The rain didn't stop by sunrise. It had become a roar, pounding the trees, swallowing the ground, drowning even the echo of machines. The earth itself was soaked to the bone, and the reservoir was full, not high, full, every alarm in. The gatehouse flashed. Pressure gauges blinked red, one after another. Digital panels screamed for action, and still waited. I sat on the rusted stool by the main valve, boots wet, rain dripping off my jacket, breath fogging the air. The gate wheel loomed in front of me, a cold iron monument to restraint. They built 35 homes on my land. They ignored the papers. They laughed at my warnings. They called me a bitter old holdout. And still, I held the line. Because I didn't want revenge. I wanted memory. I wanted the valley to remember whose hands once tilled its soil, who mapped the river, who protected it not with walls, but with understanding. But they'd broken that understanding. They had cut down the oaks where my father once hung his hammock, buried the wildflowers my mother planted, poured concrete over the very stones. My grandfather carved our family name into. That's not progress. That's erasure. I checked the security feeds. Mansion number 14, lights on. Water already swirling at the curb. Mansion number 8, children's toys on the front lawn now floating. A notice popped up on the terminal. Emergency spillway activation required. Gate integrity at 92%. Release advised. I stood, not in rage, not in resolve, because justice doesn't always come with sirens. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it rises with the rain. And sometimes it waits until the dam can no longer hold what the world refused to. See, I gripped the wheel, and then I turned it, one slow revolution at a time. The floor trembled. The pipes groaned like something ancient awakening. A deep rumble built in the reservoir's throat, not an explosion, nay. Reclaiming water surged, not wild, purposeful. 35 homes built on lies. And now they were about to meet the truth, rising fast and uninvited. It began with a breath, a low guttural shudder from beneath the earth, not unlike thunder, but deeper, older, a sound that comes not from the sky, but from the bones of the world. And then it happened. The gate opened, not all at once, not violently. No, the wheel turned with grace, slow and intentional. The way justice moves when it's been patient for far too long, the pressure released in a surge that cracked the silence wide open. From the base of the dam, water erupted like a beast, unchained. It hit the spillway with a roar that could be heard 2 valleys over. The ground trembled, the air shifted. The river that once gently kissed the edges of the land became a weapon not forged by man, but awakened by him. I watched it all from it. The ridge. I saw the first wave crash into the outer retaining wall of Riverstone Estates. 6-foot swell slammed into mansion number 3, shattering windows like glass teeth. Cars bobbed like toys in the streets. Lawns became lakes. Driveways disappeared. In seconds, by the time the second wave hit, the power went out. Streetlights fizzled. Security systems blinked and died. Cameras cut out mid-frame the final shot. A man in a bathrobe staring out his front door. Slack-jawed, watching everything he thought was permanent disappear underwater. And still the flood came. Not as chaos, but as correction. The HOAs pride their marble facades. Their imported landscaping, their backlit signs with faux elegance, were no match for gravity. Pools cracked, walls caved, water filled their basements, their foyers. Their carefully designed lives, reporters arrived by helicopter, drones buzzed overhead, capturing the impossible. A luxury subdivision swallowed in real time by a force they couldn't sue. One outlet's headline that night would read, "Riverstone washed away, locals call it the reckoning." I didn't run, I stood there, drenched in rain, face lit only by the faint glow of submerged street lamps. Because this wasn't revenge, it was a reminder. You don't build empires on stolen soil and expect the land to forget. And now, the water didn't stay. By dawn it began to withdraw, not quickly but with purpose. Like a king reclaiming his throne, then leaving his warning behind. The valley was silent again. But this time it was a graveyard. Riverstone was no longer a neighborhood. It was a reflection. Broken glass on black water. Roofs caved in, street signs twisted. Lawns were now swamps. And luxury had turned to debris. No one spoke for hours, and then came the noise. The helicopters arrived first, buzzing overhead like wasps. Then the news vans, parking on the high ground with satellite dishes rotating toward the sky like hungry eyes. They didn't ask what happened. They already had their story. HOA luxury development flooded overnight. Local man responsible. My name, my face, plastered everywhere. Some said I was a terrorist. Others said I was a hero. They called it the Floodgate incident. But to me, it wasn't an incident. It was justice that refused to beg for permission. Silvergate HOA responded within hours. They released a statement, carefully worded, dressed in legal jargon, but soaked in fear. We are investigating a malicious act of infrastructure sabotage carried out by a disgruntled individual. They didn't dare say I owned the gate, because I did. I still had the deed, still had the key, still had the proof. But more than that, I had the truth. Investigators came. Drones scanned the terrain. Insurance companies wept. Families evacuated. In silence, many never returning to gather what was left. Then came the lawsuits, dozens against me, against the city, even against the county registrar, who had proved the forged sale of my land. But the deeper they dug, the more they uncovered. False documents, shell companies, dirty signatures, and land transfers that were never legally recorded. I wasn't the villain. I was the warning shot. Judge called me to testify. I brought my grandfather's deed. I brought the original gate maintenance logs. I brought the county clerk who quietly resigned the week before. When I stood before that courtroom and was asked, "Why did you do it?" said only this: they built without asking the river, simply reminded the river it had a voice. And then I sat down. The court was packed, not just with lawyers and cameras, but with something heavier: silence. The kind of silence that only falls when justice is about to breathe. I didn't dress for drama, no tie, no suit, just the same boots that had walked that land for 20 years, and the weathered denim jacket my grandfather wore every time he patched the fence line. I carried a leather folder inside it, the truth. Across the aisle, the Silvergate attorneys sat with steel in their eyes. Expensive. Suits. Manufactured confidence. Behind them, HOA board members whispered with nervous hands. They didn't look at me, but I looked at them, because I wanted them to see what real ownership looked like. Not a name on a file, but a soul sewn into the earth. The judge read the charges. Malicious destruction of private property, It's unauthorized use of infrastructure. Willful endangerment. The gallery leaned in. I stood. My voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I revealed it. I placed the documents on the podium originals. Notarized, handwritten, dated, the deed, the water rights, the maintenance logs, the recorded footage, the old survey maps, the missing permit filings. Then I told them everything. The forged digital sale, the denied appeals, the cease and desist letters threatening the very man who owned the ground. And finally, the reservoir, the gate I maintained legally, responsibly, and silently for decades, until they gave me no choice. The prosecutor tried to paint me as unstable, angry, vindictive. But every word he spoke crumbled under the weight of evidence, because I didn't act out of rage. I acted out of memory. I didn't flood Riverstone to hurt people. I opened the floodgate to restore something no document could ever replicate. Truth. After 4 hours, the judge adjourned. When the ruling came a week later, it echoed louder than any verdict they could print. All charges dropped. Silvergate HOA fined $18.2 million in damages and fraud penalties. Ownership of the land returned. The headlines changed overnight. Landowner vindicated in landmark case, Floodgate hero or villain. Court decides the man who took back the valley. I didn't read them, I was already home. It didn't end with the ruling, because stories like this, they don't end. They ripple. They echo. Riverstone Estates is gone now. What's left is rubble, vines reclaiming marble, roots pushing through foundation. The land is healing. Not quickly, not perfectly, but truthfully. The signs were taken down. The roads, once named after investors, are now unnamed paths carved by rain, and the dam, still there, stronger, wiser. Watched. I walk the ridge every morning, the same path I walked when the homes rose, when the water surged, when the world watched. A man opened a gate and let history speak for itself. The valley doesn't roar anymore, it hums. With bird song, with wind through cedar, with the gentle flow of a river no longer blocked by greed, visitors come now. Not many, just enough. Historians, journalists, locals with questions. One teenager once asked me, "Do you regret it?" Out at the land, the quiet, the peace, and said, "I regret letting them build in the first place." He didn't understand then. He will, because legacies aren't just made in what we build, they're made in what we protect. The headlines are gone. The reporters moved on. But every time it rains, every time the reservoir rises, every time someone stares at the ridgeline and remembers what happened here, that's the echo. The HOA tried to erase me with paperwork. I answered with water. They drew lines in ink. Redrew them in flood. And when they thought they could bury memory beneath wealth, I opened the floodgate and let the past rise up, roaring unstoppable. Now, the land breathes again. And no one builds here without first asking the river's permission. The story lives not in the dam or the lawsuit. It lives in you. It's reading these words. Because someday someone will try to take your land, your name, your voice. And when they do, remember this. Let them build. Let them lie. But when the time comes, open the gate.